All right, welcome back from your lunch. I hope that you had a little bit of sustenance, maybe some fresh air. You certainly would have gotten a lot of laughter if you tuned in for the door prizes. I was thinking if you're going to the game tonight, you might hear Jenny and Sam in the stands. You'll be able to locate them immediately. You've you've now you've now learned exactly what they'll be sounding like when they're out at the game. I'm really excited to introduce you to Warren Hooley, who's our next presenter. He is well known to us and has presented to our teams before several times, and we really enjoyed his presentations. Our own preschool teachers speak so highly about him. He came and presented for our in-person conference last year and got rave reviews. Warren is from the Silks territory in Penticton, British Columbia, having mixed roots of Okanagan, Irish, and Ukrainian heritage and growing up in both Western and Indigenous worlds. Warren sees himself as a bridge, helping both sides of his ancestry move from polarity to deeper connection. For the past 10 years, Warren has passionately chosen a career of facilitating groups and delivering workshops on the topics of compassionate communication, Indigenous allyship, and group facilitation. Today, living in Vancouver, BC, Warren is passionate about creating a world where everyone can thrive and succeed in their own definition. My work is focused on teaching the tangible skills for healthy, happy, and sustainable relationships. I'm committed to helping create environments where these necessary skills can be integrated in a space that accepts people of all walks of life. Thanks so much, Warren, for being here with us today. I know you're going to have so much wisdom to share with us, just as you have every other time we've worked with you. So thanks again for being here to speak to the delegates.
My pleasure, Kristen. Thanks for the introduction.
All right, take it away.
Okay. All right. What everybody? I'll do a little my kind of traditional side of my introduction first. So, what Pascal help? Hello, good day. Cha iskui so Kate Pintosin Quinton. So my traditional name is So Kate. Maybe we can play a really fast game on the chat, maybe, or I guess on voice if you want. But anyone want to try to guess? I might have done this game before in person, so if you already know, don't give it away. But do you want to guess what traditional name? It's an animal from the Okanagan territory. Anyone? Can anybody like feel into my vibe? I think 3 times out of the 100 times I played this, people have guessed it. Oh, we got a couple porcupines right off the bat. I get that. Wolf's the most common one I hear. I wish it was wolf. It's not wolf. I'll give you a hint. It's known for being in high places, but does not have wings. Oh, did someone actually guess that? Or did they already know? I seen the name. Janine Wilson, mountain goat. Mountain sheep, great call. Squirrel, yes, awesome. Great guesses, everybody. So mountain goat is my traditional name. I do think as I've gotten older, the ripe age of 37, particularly in these last 10 years of my life, 12 years, I felt that name become more relevant to who I am as a person and trying to overcome obstacles, mountains that seem impossible, and trying to find a path and, make some progress at the very least. And in one of those areas, it's really been about communication. It's been about empathy, particularly as a man who grew up in a time when being cool and being a man, empathy and vulnerability and care and attunement weren't things that I was taught. In fact, I was bullied for those things growing up. And so by the time I graduated high school, I was a very cold, critical, beginning phases of maybe some aspects of narcissistic, really self-focused. My image was everything, my reputation. I wasn't able to take accountability. I couldn't admit I was wrong, right? I had no emotional capacity, very low thresholds for emotions in my own system. So I was constantly cutting off from emotions, my own body, to survive. And unfortunately, I think this is a really common thing for a lot of people in their high school experience, and we kind of find our own coping mechanisms to cope in our own ways. But so I came out of that, and I kind of threw myself into a deep hermit phase where I became a stoner and a gamer, playing lots of Halo in my mom's basement on the reserve in Penticton. And for a couple months, not gonna lie, it was kind of nice. But you know, as you can imagine, over time, not leaving, sleeping all day, staying up all night, eating itchy band noodles was my main staple. I lost a lot of weight. I went down to 125 pounds. I started feeling really depressed. I think a part of me knew I could do something greater with my life. I could be helping people. I could have a sense of purpose. And so I got stuck in a cycle of escapism, video games, marijuana as a way to cope with emotions that no one had ever taught me how to be with. And so when I kind of finally broke out of that, I ended up going to this place called the Anaukin Center in Penticton. It's a beautiful cultural and art school where I got to learn my language and my culture and do sweat lodges. You know, sweat lodges was a big deal because it was the first time I'd ever seen men encourage other men to express emotion. You know, a lot of times I heard my elders say it's like holding poison inside your body if you don't. Holding emotions is like holding poison. You know, you got to get it out of your system. And so seeing men encourage other men to express their anger, their tears, you know, their shame, it started to shift something inside me. And so I think in a big way, ceremony and culture really helped me start the beginning of the transformational phase of my life. And a few years later, about 4 years after that, when I was 27, 10 years ago, I found this body of work called compassionate communication. And the name of the game was empathy, this idea of like being able to name emotions, name body sensations, communicate them to another person, and most importantly, your needs. Actually being able to communicate to the human being, here's what my needs are right now in this moment. And it was a really hard process for me because I was so disconnected from myself. But as I was logically convinced through relational neurobiology, I realized that this makes a lot of sense and then maybe I should give this a shot. So I did. And sure enough, every day that I engaged in empathy and feelings and needs, it felt like my day just, my relationships, everything about my life kept getting better. And so I kept going. I probably started that when I was 25 technically, but 27 is when I actually took it seriously. And so for the past 10 years, empathy has been such a huge part of my life. And so I want to share some of the core tenets or main components of compassionate communication with you. And hopefully it can be something that benefits your life too. And it's something that I think, even if you're already quite an empathetic person, sometimes the skill set around it can always be refined. It can always be a little bit, this one little like gem you can take away and slowly integrate into your life. I've been doing it for 10 years. I'm still learning. So, and like, I'm not just saying like 10 years generally, like this is me actively going to workshops all the time, going to trainings over and over again. So I want to kind of just jump right into it because to me, an hour and a half is nothing. I want to be experiential and I want to give you a chance to practice things. Sometimes I get a little lost talking about talking. And I have so many diagrams I can show you. I love diagrams so much, but I want to get into the experience as much as possible. So I'm going to screen share on my computer here. So I guess I kind of just did my introduction. Can someone maybe Kirsten, can you verbally let me know if this is being seen?
Yeah, this is working. I can see it just fine. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So compassionate communication. I told you a little bit of my real quick introduction. I kind of already shared that. I quickly want to give you just a little history really quick with history lesson of what compassionate communication is and how it came to be. Its more popular term is nonviolent communication. I tend to prefer the term compassionate communication. But nonviolent communication was developed by clinical psychologist Marshall Rosenberg in the 1960s. The roots of it actually developed when he was working on racial integration in schools and organizations in the southern United States. So he was really helping a lot of the tension that was happening with racial dynamics at that point in U.S.'s history. He went on to create the Center of Nonviolent Communication in 1984, traveled over 65 countries, teaching NVC for 4 decades. He defined NVC. I'm going to use NVC because it's an easier way to say it, but it means nonviolent communication. It means compassionate communication. He defines it as an approach to communication based on the principles of nonviolence, which derives from the word ahimsa, which translates from Hindu and Buddhist traditions: respect for all living things and avoidance of violence towards others. NVC is a method designed to increase empathy and improve the quality of life of those who utilize the method and the people around them. Marshall passed away in 2015 at the age of 80. In his last couple of years of life, he talked about the grief he had of not seeing his work make a systemic impact on the world. So a lot of people around the world have really taken on compassionate communication, NVC, and it's really benefited them. But a lot of times people have used it more on a personal level. And he was really hoping in his lifetime he would see it start to, get into governmental systems, school systems, and really he believes that that's where massive change can start to occur. I want to take a quick acknowledgement here that people may have experienced people using nonviolent communication and actually had not a good experience with it. And that's really common, unfortunately. Like a lot of people, unfortunately, they've taken an intro, just like I'm about to do, an intro to NVC, and then they immediately try to apply it. And they're not really staying in integrity with what NVC is all about. And so they actually are still in a state of the consciousness of judgment, what I'll call it. They're actually in a state of, but they're using the languaging of NVC. So the languaging is NVC, but the energy is still judgment. And that fundamentally is not what NVC is all about. So if you've had any kind of experiences where you're like, I don't know about this NVC, I've heard way too many people tell me this. So I've actually really changed the way that I teach it because I really want people to do it in integrity. They really get what it's truly about at its heart, at its center. That's what I'm going to try to convey to you today to avoid that pitfall, those pitfalls that can happen. So NVC does tons of stuff. Mostly it's about connecting with yourself and other people on an emotional values needs-based level. That's mainly what is at the heart of it. What that can do is it also helps you make better decisions in your life because when you're connected to your needs, you can make decisions based off what you're truly needing at moment to moment. So instead of making maybe a decision from your head or what you think you should do, you're more making a decision from a place of self-connection, being like, oh, okay, these are actually my needs that are present right now. Which a great side benefit is it also regulates your nervous system. That's not necessarily the intention of NVC, but when you name your feelings, body sensations, and needs, it actually does calm your nervous system down very, very effectively. And with this capacity, it's going to strengthen your ability to build more authentic and resilient relationships. I've definitely noticed that as I've integrated NVC more into my life, all my relationships I'm able to navigate conflict better. I'm able to navigate difference of opinion, different approaches to things, different strategies for life, right? Like I live in a house right now with 5 other people, in Vancouver. It's very expensive here. So I lead a 7-bedroom house. I'm the main leaseholder, and I've had to find 4 other people that I can live with. And so being able to navigate dynamics like cleaning systems, for example, which tends to be one of the primary ways that conflict arises in houses. If someone's on, fundamentally, they're just like where they're at in their life, they're like a 5 out of 10 cleanliness level. And then they're living with someone who's a 9 out of 10 cleanliness level. It's going to be really, really challenging for those 2 people to coexist without feeling some kind of tension between the two of them. And so being able to communicate your feelings and needs in that moment, really listen to each other with curiosity and genuinely try to understand each other, not putting the energy of my way is right, your way is wrong. Letting that go for a sec and really trying to understand does unbelievable things for any relationship in your life. And yet, as simple as that might sound, it's actually quite challenging to remember to do it. So today we're going to explore a little bit of this. Also, feel free to chime in with questions in the chat box. I'll try to make sure I catch them. Or you can raise your hand and verbally ask as well. Very open. I don't know if any of these are really needed to mention. I think maybe, okay, well, passive empathy, and this is like my definitions. I made these up, some of them. Passive empathy is what you'll see in a dictionary. It's imagining what someone else might be feeling. But active empathy is literally communicating out loud and going through the process of, instead of just imagining in my own mind, oh, the person must be scared. Active empathy is saying, are you feeling scared? So you actually find out. So that's the active empathy. And that's a lot of what this body of work is based on, is verbalizing it. And needs, this is a kind of more spiritual. Oh, here, maybe I should go to the next diagram first. The present manifestation of divine energy within you. It's kind of like a more spiritual take on what needs are. So let me use this diagram for a quick sec. So most of the world we live in, most of the Western world specifically, the colonized world that we are in, predominantly focuses on the mind. Now, the mind's not a bad thing. Mind's a really powerful, incredible tool. It does so many great things for our lives. And yet, I think most people would agree that indigenous cultures across the planet have a more holistic approach to life. They balance the mind with the physical, with the spiritual, with the emotional, and they're equally seen as important. In the Western world, it tends to put a lot more eggs in the basket of the mind, so to speak. And so for me, and it was very true that I grew up, especially the first 25 years of my life, extremely mind dominant. I was always told that that's the most important thing to develop. That's what makes you good at schooling, And so, what is it when I mean needs? So what essentially what NVC is trying to do is, instead of just staying in your mind, you want your mind to still be on board. How do we go into the feelings, which is this second circle, the green circle, which, as you can see, I put a compass into it. I really believe that every emotion you feel, every body sensation you feel for the rest of your life is trying to communicate with you. There's a reason why, evolutionarily, we've developed these really complex nervous systems in our bodies. They're actually wildly brilliant feedback system that's trying to communicate with us all the time. But because we live in a society that's so mind dominant, we can tend to, to a smaller degree, dissociate into our heads, not really pay attention to our body and our feelings, and just kind of keep pushing past and keep going on with life. Now, on one hand, I feel like it's important to acknowledge that being able to emotionally contain, push to the side, is an important skill to have. I do think that that's a helpful thing. And at times, you're in a position where you can't go into the emotions and you need to push it aside to be able to accomplish what's in front of you. So that is an important thing to have. And I do recommend building that capacity. And also equally important is to create space in your life where you do allow yourself to feel, you do allow yourself to name the feelings and the body sensations. And when we're able to build our vocabulary, build our self-awareness of naming those things, then those are going to point us towards what our needs are, quote unquote, needs. There's lots of synonyms you can have for this word. It could be values, could be longings, even desires. Everyone's going to have their own definition of those words, so it's a little bit tricky. So let me give you an example of what I mean. So I mean, actually, I wonder if there's someone out there who's willing. Oh, why isn't that changing? Can someone give me an example of like a judgment you hear? What's an example of a judgment you hear, maybe even in your role? Like as if some of you work with preschool, schoolers, can someone give me an example of a judgment you hear? What we're gonna do is we're gonna take that judgment, which is very much in the mind, and we're gonna translate it into feelings and then needs. You're a pushover. Okay, the first one I seen was you're a pushover. Okay. So one of the quotes that I love from Marshall Rosenberg is every judgment in life is a tragic expression of your needs. Every judgment in life, so every judgment you think, every judgment you communicate is a tragic expression of your needs. I'm seeing lots of comments come in. That's great. I love that. I can potentially use a few of these. This is a really important quote, and I kind of wish I wrote it down on the slide, but I didn't. Every judgment is a tragic expression of our needs. Why is that? Is because when we express, when we express a judgment, we're trying to communicate something to somebody, right? There's emotions there, there's needs that are underneath it. But when we say just the surface level of the judgment, which is usually more of a reactive response, how do people typically respond to judgments? When you say to someone, you're a pushover, oh yeah, you're just a babysitter. How are people normally going to respond to judgment? What's a really common, laugh it off, yeah. Defensive, yes, absolutely.
Warren, we had one person just ask if you might repeat the quote. I think they didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, maybe if I can write it down here. Every judgment is a tragic expression. This is, oh. Oops. Marshall Rosenberg. Every judgment is a tragic expression of our needs. Yes. Okay, so coming back here, they could laugh it off, they could become defensive, they could get angry, they could be hurt, they can go into fight or flight, right? Absolutely. All those are true. Like most likely you're gonna get defensiveness, or you're gonna get someone to kind of shut down and they're not gonna feel safe around you. They're gonna maybe they're gonna start changing their behavior around you. You know, they might just kind of shut down. And either way, is that the relationship you want? This is one of the hardest pills that I had to swallow was, do I want the kind of relationship where when I put out judgments and the impact that it tends to have now, right? Acknowledging that like some people they kind of have thicker skins, they can hear judgments, doesn't affect them as much. There are people like that, or some days they might feel a bit better, maybe it doesn't affect them as much. Great. I just find that we live in such a judgment saturated world that, and we also live in a world that productivity is driving so hard that we tend to be pretty stretched. So sometimes our patience and our capacity is a little bit lower. So our ability to hold judgment and be okay with it might not be as strong. And so coming back to the pill, the hard pill to swallow is like, basically, are you willing to live with the kind of relationships you're going to have if the way that you're communicating your feelings and needs is through judgment? And don't get me wrong, they're going to slip out of you, right? It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Like I still to this day doing it so much, there's still times where I'll still say reactively, I'll be reactive, I'll say something, you know, it still happens. But at least now I have the wherewithal to be like, oh, okay. I come back to what I call healthy humility. Wow, yeah, okay, you know what? I'm recognizing that I just said, you know, I use the word pushover. That's not really what I mean. Like, what I meant to say was here, and I'm going to try to show you. Maybe instead of pushover, let's pretend I'm the person saying pushover. Let's say I try to translate into feelings and needs. I might be like, I guess I'm feeling kind of frustrated. I have this need for there to be a sense of safety. And when I can feel like someone can step up and be assertive and strong in their voice, that's when I feel safe. And so I know I said pushover, and I apologize for that. It's not really what I meant, but this is what's really important to me. Does that make sense to you? Boom, now I'm opening a conversation into, look, I'm opening the window and I'm like, here's what's going on for me. This is the truth underneath the layer of my judgment. And that is when understanding can start to occur. Really commonly what happens is when I open that window, the other person will be like, yeah, okay, I hear what you mean. And they will commonly go into either humility, respect, usually starts to form. And this is where really great communication starts to happen. We start to understand each other. That's what NBC is about. That's the true heart of it. It's about understanding. The true intention that Marshall Rosenberg wanted to get across was to bring more understanding to the world, more like curiosity, genuinely trying to understand someone on the level of feelings and needs specifically.
The question of, could you repeat that? Recognizing you were reactive, you come back with ... It's in the chat.
Oh yeah, thank you. Like being able to, it takes a certain level of self-awareness, right? But being able to, I guess, take accountability. It's a version of what I would define as taking accountability. Is part of that for me is taking accountability that when I use judgment words, it's going to have an impact on somebody. And so I call it healthy humility. I try not to go into like shame, right? I'm not going into like self-judgment and shame that I slipped up and I was reactive. I'm trying not to do that, although that might happen, right? I might have to go through an internal process where I do go through that, where I do feel some shame. And sometimes people avoid, I think, going into humility and taking accountability because they don't want to have to feel the feelings of shame and self-judgment. And I can understand that. That kind of makes sense. That's how I was when I was a young man. Like I was so afraid of taking accountability because of the emotional process it would bring up inside of me. And I had no skills, no ability, no support system, no one to call to help me go through that. I didn't even know it existed. I didn't even know it was a thing. But obviously the more times I've done it, the more I start to be like, okay, yeah, I always come out the other side. Okay, I still uncomfortable to this day. I still feel uncomfortable in it, but I know I'm going to be okay. And so now my willingness to take accountability, my willingness to try to go through the phase of maybe a little bit of shame or self-judgment is a lot higher. And part of that is because I know I know fundamentally that's the core component of a healthy relationship. That I'm not going to be able to have the relationships I want in my life unless I really learn humility and I learn accountability. I learn how to apologize, And it's not saying like I was wrong. That's not what I'm saying apologies are. It's more like, hey, I'm acknowledging that when I use this judgment word, it had this impact on you. And I'm also acknowledging that maybe it didn't really convey what was actually going on for me. What was actually going on for me was, this is how I was feeling. These are the needs that are alive for me. So I'm talking so much. Yeah. So much of this work is about, it's the self-connection process first. Oh, I wish I had the diagram. I don't have it. But there's a diagram of a tree that I really love from nonviolent communication. And the roots are really the self-connection, knowing my own feelings and needs. That's the foundation of NVC. And then one side of the branches is like curiosity for another person. So being willing to find out their feelings and needs and listen, ask questions, which is what we're going to focus on today mostly. And then the other branch is self-expression. So you're now expressing your feelings and needs to the other person. A lot of people want to jump to expression, but it's actually the most complicated and takes the most time of practicing the other two to get to that point. So self-connection, naming your own feelings and needs, first foundation. Second foundation, listening, learning to listen to other people and hear their feelings and needs consensually. And the last stage, being able to communicate your own. Should I write that in the chat? I don't know. I mean, I can put that in a slide. Actually, I'll put that slide in my slide deck. I'll update the slide deck and I'll send that out after this. Okay. So feelings, needs. Oh, I think I missed the slide here. I think it's out of order. Give me a sec. Consciousness. Okay. So I want to go into, this is the main thing. This is the last part I'm going to really talk about, and I want to do a practice around it. But one of the most important things about NVC is that it needs to be a differentiation between the skill set, like the languaging of NVC. There's things I can teach you about that, but I'm not going to teach you that yet, because I really want you to get, I don't know what else to call it. It's like the energy or the consciousness of what NVC is all about, the main intention of it. This is what is the foundation that everything else is built on. So no matter how much languaging you use or the structures or the terminology of NVC, it's not NVC if you're not embodying curiosity and presence and warmth, and you're genuinely trying to understand this person. That's what NVC is truly about. And it took me a long time to remember this. In my early phases, people didn't teach me this, and so a lot of the times I'd find myself using feelings and needs, but my intention was just to get what I wanted. My intention was to win the argument. That's not NVC. I'm just utilizing NVC for my own, for something, for a different intention. Let's say that, for a different intention. So I'm gonna run all the way back up here. Yeah. So these are the three components that I love to teach, and I think they're these three aspects of any conversation you have. These are always present, these three things. And I don't think we talk about them very often. They don't get like airtime. So your intention. And while you're in conversation, being able to develop a new muscle that gets you to check in with yourself. What's my intention right now? What am I trying to accomplish? So obviously, if like someone says something you disagree with, or maybe someone does something that you don't like, right? Our intention can really easily fall into, you're wrong and I'm right. Very, very easily. And there needs to be a lot of humility with that. That's really normal for us to do. The world we live in teaches us all the time. Right and wrong consciousness. Someone's right, someone's wrong. All of the punitive punishment system we live in teaches us that. Yeah. Or our intention might be like, I want this person to do this instead. Let's do that again. I think I'm doing too abstract. Let's think of an example here. So in my house, we have a new spare room that opened up. And so we had to decide how we were going to decorate it. And so what I noticed is that one of my roommates, the first thing she put in there was these 4 fuzzy pink carpets, really plush, big pink carpets. And, I don't necessarily have anything against pink, but like, it's not my first choice. So like, I noticed right away, there's this part of me that started to make little jokes, right? I started making little teasing jokes about it being this fully pink room. And I was kind of projecting also what I imagined the trajectory of how the room was going to be designed. And I think without realizing it, my intention was to probably change the design and change her mind about how we were going to design the room. But I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't really being aware of why I was teasing her. And she ended up feeling hurt by it, one of the comments I said. And so I really had to take a step back and be like, whoa, okay, she's communicating that she's hurt, And then all of a sudden my focus goes, what was going on for me right there. And don't get me wrong, teasing can be a really great way. It's an amazing part of relationships. And yet sometimes that teasing is like, it's not that effective. It's better just to be really clear and be like, hey, you know what? I'm not sure how I feel about the pink fuzzy carpets. Like, I know my dad's gonna want to come over and stay here, and I just, it's like I'd love to pick a room that feels a little bit more neutral so that anyone would feel comfortable in it. Like, what do you think about that? And so being able to just open that dialogue. Okay, so I think I'm talking too much. I really want us to practice this. Okay, so I guess I didn't tell the organizers. Can I get feedback from the organizers? Is breakout workshops possible? Breakout rooms, something that can happen?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Like, how many rooms would you like?
We have 175 people
I
online
noticed.
right now. Yeah.
I see that. Okay, let me just think really clearly here about. So usually the exercise is, I'm going to get you to do both of them back to back, just because breaking out multiple times might be complicated. I think it's just a pair, really. So groups of 2. I know that's a lot of rooms. I guess there's probably some groups out there. I think I've seen a couple groups that had people in person. If you're in person and you're in a group right now, you can partner with someone beside you. Right. So it's a group of 7. If you're in a group of 7, like, you can do it in a group of 3. So the exercise is doable in a group of 3. You know what? Is it better if we do larger groups because it's less breakout rooms?
The
It
thing
doesn't
that I'm
matter.
thinking that might be more helpful if we had a bit of a bigger group is that if we do pairs, but some of the pairs get pulled from a group that's in person, then it won't work well in those pairs. So maybe if we do like a group of 4.
Okay. I would say you can have a group anywhere between 3 and 5. Well, it'll still work. It'll be a little different, but that's okay. Group of anywhere between 3 and 5.
Okay, I've got it
so-
set so it'll automatically put people into groups of 3 to 4.
Okay.
Is that
And some people are in person with each other. If there's 5 of you,
Yeah.
that's fine.
and so they can
7,
just turn their screen off and do it
Yeah.
on their own.
I seen one group say your group is 7. I'd probably recommend one group of 3, one group of 4. Okay. So let me describe now what you're going to do. Okay. So I want you to have 2 conversations back to back. They're not going to be very long. Maybe like 2.5 minutes.
Sorry, Warren, I just see that someone says they don't have enough devices. And so if you are just using one and you're in a group, just don't join in the online
Yes.
breakout rooms. Just do a breakout room of the people that are in your physical space.
Exactly.
Just for clarity's sake.
Yes, like get into like go into a circle of 3 of you. Like for the group of 7, for example, 3 of you like literally sit in a circle with each other. 4 of you sit in another circle in person with each other. You don't need to pair up online with anyone else. Thank you everyone for being willing to coordinate this. With this many people, it's definitely it's gonna take some group effort.
Okay, well, I have the rooms all set up. So whenever you
Okay.
want me to open them, I'll open them and people can join.
So I'm gonna describe it, and then maybe we can someone also write down my instructions right now and then post it to the breakout groups in case they need to reread it. It should be pretty straightforward, but I mean, I can also type it out.
I'm gonna ask Wendy to do that. She's just in the other room and I think she should be able to do that for us.
Okay, I can also write it out if need be. Okay, so here's your instructions. You're gonna have 2 conversations. The first conversation is going to be, what's better, cats or dogs? Okay, but here's the key part. Your intention is to win, is to prove you're right. Okay, the other group is wrong, you're right. That's your intention. All right. Once you've had that conversation for about 2.5 minutes, maybe we'll give you a timer of the halfway mark. Then I want you to switch your intention, and you're gonna have the same conversation. What's better, cats or dogs? But your intention is going to be to really try to understand each other. Okay? So I'll say that one more time. First conversation, 2.5 minutes, let's say, ish. Which is better, cats or dogs? Your intention is to win, is to prove that you're right. Okay? The second you keep having a conversation for another 2.5 minutes, but your intention changes. And now your intention is to really try to understand each other. 2 convos back to back. Does that make sense? I'll write this out, or Wendy will write this out.
I think we've got Wendy. I can see it up in the chat already.
Okay. We'll do your best. Just communicate with us if you need support getting into groups. Okay, so we're not gonna do it online yet. We're gonna do this we're gonna do it with the person you break out with.
Okay, are you ready for the rooms then?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so when I open up the rooms, a thing is going to pop up on your screen, and you'll need to click join to join into the room that's been selected for you. And the rest of us will be in the main room. If you end up stuck in the main room, you can just unmute yourself and ask me for support, and I'll be there to help you out. Okay, here we go.
The rock star, Clara.
See, we still have some people joining. So just let me know if you need help getting into the breakout room. Seeing some people who've been presenters and were made co-hosts they did not get sent into the rooms.
Hi, Warren. I decided to take a moment to say hi. Long time no see.
I can only hear your voice. I think it's because I'm screen sharing.
Sorry.
Hey,
okay.
I got put in a group by myself.
Oh no, who's that speaking right now?
It's
Is that
Miranda Adams.
Miranda?
So I don't
Okay, do
need
you know
to
which
screen
room
share.
you're in, Miranda?
Oh, sorry, no, I don't. I just was the only one in it.
Okay, I'll have a look. I see someone else who's in another room by themselves. So there's a lot of rooms, so it might take me a minute to find you.
Yeah, no problem.
Close that just so I can see people.
Still looking for you, Miranda. I'm seeing other people on their own as well, and so I'm kind of, as I'm seeing them, I'm moving them
Oh yeah, that's okay.
as well.
there. She belongs in room 42.
Is she in 42 right now?
Nope.
Oh,
Dump her there.
okay, so there are people in your room now, Miranda.
Okay,
There's two other people. So
okay.
if you go back into it, there's two people in room 42, which is the one you would be asked.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Warren, I'm just gonna pop. I've been asked for help in one of the rooms, so I'm just gonna pop into that room and see what they need.
Perfect.
And Warren, we've got a number of other staff like on hand, so just yell out if you need us. We're hanging in until you let us know to close the rooms.
Okay.
I know you can't see my photo. Sorry, Kirsten. Well, Warren, but it's Wendy. We worked together at One Sky in Harm Reduction years ago. So I'm here as well as
Oh, hi,
BCX
Ken. Hi,
staff.
Wendy. Yeah. I recognize the name.
We can actually send out a broadcast to all the groups when we're just like halfway done, just to let them know that we're going
Yeah.
to close it.
How much time does it say? How much time is elapsed? How much time has gone by?
No, but we could say right now that we've probably done a minute at least, for sure.
Oh yeah. I feel like we're at.
So I'll
think
give
we're
them
probably at that.
until,
I
I'll
would
give
say
them
2 or
till,
3 maybe.
give them one more minute then.
I think we might want to give a few more minutes just because we have a few people who were late to get into their break room because they were,
It's true.
yeah.
Okay, it's 2:03 right now, so we'll wait till 2:05. I mean, I'll send them a message at 2:05 just to give them a heads up that we're going to pull them back over shortly.
Yeah, maybe in 1 minute, maybe at 2:04, can you just remind them to switch over to trying to understand each other if they haven't already?
Sure. Yeah.
And I did broadcast both questions in the breakout rooms.
I just realized I was talking and no one could hear me. I was just going to say, I'm seeing lots of people who aren't in breakout rooms. If you're wanting to join a breakout room and you're not sure how, just let me know and I'll do what I can to support you to get into one.
Yeah, or if you want to talk to me right now about it, I can also explain it. We can just unpack it.
I love that you're doing compassionate communication. Jenny and I actually just did a facilitator training a few months ago. It's an online one. And
With
so it
who?
was, oh my gosh, I can't, her name was Mary. Jenny, do you remember what her last name was? It was through
Marianne
the,
Matheson?
she's not Canadian, someone in California, I believe.
Yeah. I think I know who you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, she runs the like NBC Academy or something.
Yes, that, yeah.
Yeah. I've never actually heard her speak before, but I see her promotions all the time.
Yeah.
How was it?
Yeah. It was really good. I was introduced to NBC about 20 years ago. And so I haven't done as much as you, but it's been my partner, he's done quite a bit more and it's kind of part of our relationship, but it was nice doing the facilitator training and kind of starting to move in that direction. So it's,
Hmm.
yeah. I'm being asked to join a breakout room. I'll be back in a minute. We're out of the meeting.
Hmm.
Okay, it's Veronica. What do you think? We're at 2:06. They got the gist of it, hopefully, and you want to
Yeah,
roll them
I
back
think
over?
it's. I think so. Maybe if you can do like can you do the countdown thing? Maybe.
Sure, sure.
I'm partial to dogs.
Why? What's your what do you think like is the heart behind that?
Because they're loyal and they
Mm.
tend to love you unconditionally no matter what. And
Mm,
they have a strong sense of how you're feeling.
mm, definitely. Did you also grow up with them? Like that seems to be a pretty strong contributing factor.
Oh yeah. I had several dogs as a child. Auntie Yvonne?
Oh, I like cats. Yeah, because you don't have to take them for a walk. They
Yeah.
can go outside themselves and come back when they feel like it.
Hmm.
But
They're
you
more
know,
independent.
yeah. There are lots of work. You have to feed them, clean their litter box.
Although there's lots of new machines being invented that you can buy if you want to, like self-cleaning litter boxes and
Oh, yeah,
food dispensers and
right. Oh,
yeah.
better get that. Yeah.
And I like big dogs. I'm
Mm,
a big dog. I like mastiffs and I like Rottweilers. Shepherds not so much, but yeah, because they're more gentle.
hmm.
And how about you?
I'm definitely more on the cat side of the spectrum, but I've grown to like dogs more because it's a lack of exposure in a lot of ways growing up. But as I've gotten to know dogs more as an adult, I'm like, oh wow, I see. You know, one of my roommates, she'll dog sit pretty consistently, so I've seen a variety of different kinds of dogs, and I'm like, oh okay, I see it, I see it. Like there was one, it was a smaller dog, wasn't a Chihuahua, but it looked kind of similar. Um, and at first he was quite yappy and barking, but once he got to know you, then he wouldn't anymore, and then he was really chill and pretty
Okay,
sweet.
they're going to come back now.
Okay, bring him back. So yeah, they've grown on me. But I grew up with a cat, so she was the love of my life as a little boy. So it's just it'll always be that way, probably. Okay,
I actually used to have a cat that used to sleep across my neck. When I went to bed, it always slept across my neck. Yeah.
Which some people would love, some people maybe not so much. Okay. Are people still coming back in? Looks like it, eh?
What if you like lizards?
Yeah, of course you can like other animals. Yeah. Just for the sake of ease of that exercise, I just do two. I've tried different things that would be like pick one animal you love and then you can have a conversation about why yours is the best. But yes, lizards are great too. Okay.
No,
What was
cats are the best. That's it.
it? End of story.
No.
Are we back? Are we fully back? It looks like it 168 looks about the number. Okay, so can I just hear back from anybody? Did anybody notice the difference what were some of the difference you noticed for when you held an intention of winning versus holding an intention of understanding?
Okay, so the first one was very hostile. It seemed like a hostile environment because you were right, everybody else was wrong. But then when you were discussing it and to understand, it was very compassionate and empathetic. That's what I felt. And I got to meet two wonderful ladies. So,
awesome.
And critters in general are wonderful.
Yeah. So I like, Christine, thank you for saying that. I do notice this as a pattern, that if you get into a group of people where no one's assertive and no one's like willing to like interrupt and talk over top people, and like, then both conversations end up being really empathetic and listening either way. I've seen that before. Yeah, totally understandable. But it's good to remember this. And sometimes it's maybe a little trickier to get into this with cats and dogs, but in another category, you might really get into it. You get into that.
We could pick which one was better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can be a tricky thing. So, but more what this exercise is about is recognizing that when become aware of your intention. Like, yes, you might not do with cats and dogs and you're really listening, but then when your partner starts talking about how we're going to clean something, all of a sudden you might be really, really like pushing back against it. So being able to recognize, when do you go flip into that kind of reaction of like, no, this way's the right way, that way's the wrong way, right? And you know, this is the tricky thing, is like maybe one way is more effective than the other at, say, cleaning, for example. That could be the case. But taking the time to really understand someone and where they're coming from, and also taking responsibility for why you've developed your way, and being able to communicate what value systems are driving your strategy, your way of doing it. And are you capable of naming that, communicating that to somebody else, letting them in, right? Instead of just being like, no, this is how we're doing it, end of story. And of course, there's maybe times when we need to do that. Sometimes when we're working with kids, you kind of got to be that assertive, like, this is what's happening. We're getting ready for school. You know, you just kind of got to go into that energy. You do, that needs to happen in life. But especially when we're working with adults and other people, youth too, being able to recognize the moments when being a little patient, not going to describing why your way is the right way or why their way doesn't work, trying to understand each other. This is what it's all about. This is what NVC is. It's that part of the relationship, understanding. I see Greg putting in the chat box, who won? Oh, let me read some of these comments. Yes, you understand the perspective better when you try to understand. Yeah, some people will love both cats and dogs, of course. That's gonna happen too.
Our elder just said that she always tells her husband the answer is yes, dear.
Yes, dear.
And I hear that a lot. Like a happy wife is a happy life, and you know, always agree. And to some degree, of course, like you don't need to go into everything and like make everything this long spoken, you know, sharing between the two of you. Sometimes it is helpful to concede. And if we're avoiding vulnerability, if we're avoiding letting someone in, then that it's just not going to be as connected, right? One of the things Marshall says is like, human beings, he fundamentally believes, and I believe this too, that human beings want to enrich each other's lives. We have a natural desire to want to enrich each other's lives. And when you illuminate to someone what your needs are, they become like a gift, because now they get the opportunity to meet your needs. And so it's really easy to see this when you're the one giving support and you're the one offering support to someone. It's like, oh yeah, it feels great. I love helping other people. But all of a sudden, when it's your turn and you need to be vulnerable about like, hey, this is my needs, and the other person needs to meet our needs, it can be a lot harder. It's a vulnerable place, right? They might say no, they might reject us. And so being able to kind of flip that idea of like, hey, my needs are actually gifts, and someone is going to feel really great about helping meet this. Now, it might not be that person. This is one of the other philosophies of NVC. That's a hard one. It's another hard pill to swallow, is that it's not ideal to attach your needs to a specific strategy, which can also be a specific human being, which is one of the hardest things. Like, let's say I really want to be heard. My partner may not be able to do it. They just might not. They might be too stressed out. They're overwhelmed. Maybe the thing that I'm sharing touches their wounding. They can't hold space for it. But the truth is I have a need to be heard, to be cared. So how do I make sure I open myself to the infinite strategies that do exist in front of me, the many different ways that I could get that need met? So there's a responsibility in our own needs and recognizing that there is infinite strategies, trying not to get too locked in on, I need it to happen, my need needs to be met this way exactly. One of the hardest things that I think has been for me in learning this body of work is taking responsibility for my needs, communicating them, finding many ways to meet them. Very tricky. Okay, so I'm going to come back to my diagram here. I want to tie this back into the intention part. There we go. So in nonviolent communication, you know that you're doing it if you do these three things. Okay, this is how you know if you're doing NVC or you're not doing NVC. Your presence, the quality of your presence, should be at the minimum curious. Even better if there can be warmth connected to it. We're not always going to be able to be warm. Sometimes you're just not in a space to be warm, but curious for sure. So it's this presence of curiosity. I could not say a single word to somebody and just be with them, and what kind of energy I'm holding is going to completely affect them. Our energy is powerful. So if I'm in an energy of like slightly distracted, I'm in an energy of like a little bit annoyed, I'm in an energy of like, I'm not saying anything out loud, but I'm like disagreeing with you in my mind. All of that can be felt by the other person. They might not know exactly what it is, but you can guarantee that it's affecting the other person. So for me, really, I've tried to remind myself, I actually call this the bubble, the listening bubble. I actually like imagine myself creating this energy, this energetic bubble that expands, encapsulating me and the other person. And that bubble is essentially these three things. My presence is curious. My intention is to really understand them. And my spotlight is like trying to understand them specifically on a feelings and needs level. So this is the consciousness or the heart of what NVC is all about. If you stop focusing on feelings and needs, if you stop trying to understand them, if you stop being curious, any one of them, you're not doing NVC anymore. That's just not what it's meant to be. You're doing something else. And don't get me wrong, this isn't the only skill you learn in your life. It's just one thing. It's one thing that's really powerful and really impactful. You can do other things and that's okay.
Hi, Warren. Our auntie has a question for you because she's wondering because you're bringing up some thoughts for her in regards to how you make things sound easy. So she has a question that is just strictly in that regard. Okay, nothing else.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you're married.
I'm not married, no.
So you can practice these skills and then have children, right? You know? Yeah.
Absolutely. I've been in a number of long-term relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I can show you my track record of how unsuccessful my relationships were, or maybe they were somewhat successful. but how
Yes.
much more healthy, sustainable, loving, understanding my relationships have become in correlation to learning this.
Okay.
I'm
Wonderful.
also a youth worker, so I've worked with lots of youth. I don't have kids myself either, so I do need to digress, and to some degree, I think the closer you are to someone, the harder this gets, which is a really tricky thing, right? The closer you are with someone, the harder it gets to do these very things.
Yes, I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so bringing some compassion to ourselves about that we can't be perfect, we can't, like, that's the irony, right? This is why learning NVC with strangers is ideal, is because the amount of history between the two of you is pretty much non-existent. So it's a lot easier to practice at one out of 10 difficulty. And I think that's another pitfall in this body of work, is people will go home and immediately try to do it with their partners, immediately try to do it with their family. And it's really tough because you're going into like 7 to 10 out of 10 difficulty territory. And it's very likely you're going to fail. It's very, very likely. And then you might just give up on it, be like, oh, NVC doesn't work. But it really is something that takes practice, just like anything. It's like, if I gave you a basketball, would you try to play in the NBA league right off the bat, the most professional league? No, you wouldn't. You would practice the dribbling skills and you'd get the basics of the technique down. And then you start to play with people who are in your skill range, and you would slowly progress. And I think that's true about any skill. You might have had people in your life that were empathetic and kind of role modeled this to you, so you might have a lot of foundation already there. But some of us didn't at all, including me. I had none. I started with I was very critical and very mind dominant. So my learning arc was a lot steeper. Took me a lot longer, I think, than most people. My daughter will say, don't do the NV thing with me, Mom. Okay, so let me talk about that for a second. So I do really think this is one of the other pitfalls of NVC, is not being consensual. This is why consent is so important here. Actually, I think I might even have a slide about this. So when I'm engaging in NVC with someone, depending who it is, right? Consent's a really tricky thing. It's a very complex concept because everything is contextual and situational. So I really make sure that, especially if I don't know the person or I'm not sure if they're okay with it, I really be like, hey, are you open to me making some guesses of your feelings and needs here? I might say more. I might even be like, I'm learning this new way of communicating and I really want to practice it with you because I really want to try to understand you. I want to understand where you're coming from. So that's my why. So I was really specific about what I was asking. There's my why. And I might even say, and you know what? If that's something you don't feel comfortable with, that's okay. I'm okay. I'm comfortable hearing no. It's just showing them that it's okay. And so these are three main elements of consent. And usually consent isn't popularized in communication. It's very popularized in touch, like giving hugs, for example. It's usually not as common. But for me, the reason why consent is so important with NVC specifically is because you are going into someone's feelings and needs. And it can be a very vulnerable thing. It's a very sacred place. I really treat that feelings and needs area as very sacred and very tender. And so entering into that place with someone, it is sometimes good to get permission. Sometimes consent is more of like a feeling thing. You're not literally verbalizing it. Sometimes you're attuning to it and you're sensing it. And maybe you're like, do you feel a little irritated? Do you feel some irritation? And the person really opens towards your guess. And they're like really suddenly open up more. It's kind of a way of them showing you that yes, they're open to this. So even though I didn't verbally ask, hey, can I make some guesses about what you're feeling? Sometimes you can kind of test the waters. But what's most important about all of that is just being attuned to them and being aware. If you ever do NVC in a way that kind of crosses their boundaries a little bit, they don't want to be vulnerable about it, then they might start to build a bad association to NVC, and they don't want to do it anymore. Or like if NVC is being kind of woven in with you getting what you want or getting them to do their chores or something like that, then they're going to start to associate it with like, oh, it's not just about you understanding me. You're actually using this to try to get me to do something. So the intention has to be really pure with NVC. It's got to be really true in the heart of just trying to understand them. Then when you end up the understanding, now you can move away. You can move away from NVC and be like, okay, now let's go into strategies. Now that I heard your needs, okay, let's try to build a strategy together, a plan that's going to work for both of us, you know? This is great. You guys asking really great questions. You're really naturally bringing out all the pitfalls just from your questions, because there are a lot of them. There's more than what I've named so far. I'll quickly show you so no clear consent. These are the common pitfalls. You try to do NVC when you're too triggered. If you're too triggered, how can you possibly be curious and try to understand them? So once you get to a certain threshold of trigger, the most ideal thing is to walk away. Is to be like, hey, I need to take a pause. I need to go for a walk, which can be a really hard thing to do. Really tricky, depending how like self-righteous you feel about the thing. Sometimes it can come across as repetitive and formulaic. You're like, I noticed when you slammed the door, I felt scared because I have a need for safety, and it starts to get really formulaic. This is why in this intro, I'm not even teaching you the formula, because I don't want people to walk away trying to use that right off the bat, because that is one of the pitfalls. Unbalanced output is like you're holding way too much space and you're not receiving enough in your life. You're actually not being held enough. People need to also be empathetic towards you. You need to be heard. You need to be listened to. You need to feel someone's care and curiosity. That's so crucial. You need some in before you can keep putting out, right? Your cup's got to be filled up. And so there's a responsibility we also need to take in that, like asking for help, asking for support, which is tough, especially when you have busy lives and kids and you're working, and there can be so many things there. So finding ways to, efficiently get your cup filled can be a challenge, but it's definitely doable. More practice. You just haven't practiced enough. And that's part of why and alignment is like being aligned with the intention of understanding and being curious. Sometimes deeper healing work can be at play. I would also say taking responsibility for your past wounds. A lot of the times what's happening is our old wounds are coming up and we're projecting it onto the people close to us. This is another tough pill to swallow, but like, I remember this one time, one of my roommates didn't want to show up to an NVC practice group that I was creating in the house. She didn't come the first time. I was mildly annoyed. The second time, I got like 9 out of 10 triggered. I was like super triggered of her not showing up. And then I was like, whoa. So I have the wherewithal now to be like, hey, is this level of emotional intensity matching what's happening in front of me? And I thought to myself, I probably should be about a 3 out of 10, and I'm a 9 out of 10. So it's probably saying that 6 degrees of intensity comes from my past. And sure enough, as I looked into it, my abandonment mood stuff was there. And so it's my responsibility. It's not her responsibility to take on the intensity of my 9, right? She has nothing to do with my mom leaving when I was a kid. And so that's my responsibility. So I had to go and I'd, again, ask for help, work through that process. And sure enough, I brought my 9 back down to a 3. And then I was able to talk to her about it. Sure enough, we worked through it really well. So that kind of ties in with the 2 triggered one as well. Yes. And I said this one earlier, attaching needs to people specifically can be tricky. It's almost like we start to have an idea that like, you're supposed to do this. You need to do this for me. And The tragedy of that is that people are they might feel like a little bit like they probably do want to do those things, but they're going to be more receptive to doing those things if you open your open heart to them. Then they're going to want from their heart to meet your needs authentically. And they might not too. You might open your heart and be like, these are my needs. And the person might be like, I'm too overwhelmed. But here's my heart too. But I'm too overwhelmed. I can't do that right now. But at least you have clarity. You understand each other. Reading comments really quick. So is it 2:45 that I have till? Someone confirm that with me. I'm trying to think of anything else I should share here.
So you do have 15 more minutes.
Okay. Trying to think here. I'm just looking at my slides to see. I don't want to go into that.
There was a question around how do you differentiate self versus an approach?
Self versus approach.
That was me, Warren. I was saying that how do you, if your way of being is one of an intention that's compassion and understanding focused, right? And that's just your way of being. So then how do you differentiate that? Like what I hear when you're talking about consent.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think the difference is with NVC is you're literally asking feelings and needs questions. So like that's the difference is like if you're just holding space of curiosity and warmth and you're trying to understand them. So technically speaking, yeah, you could even say that those first two, presence and intention, if you're only doing those two, that might not be NVC either per se. What really makes it NVC is when you literally start making guesses. So that would be like, so are you feeling sad? You know, do you have a need for stability? You know, that's when it starts to become, now I'm going into the NVC world because I'm literally making these guesses of feelings and needs. And that's where consent's more needed, because it's like, that is a great question. Because now you're getting them to look inside. They're like, I always think of a feelings and needs guess as this like little offering. I'm like, do you need stability? And then they grab it and then they feed it, and they're like, do I have a need for stability? And then they might be like, no, it's not stability. It's actually empowerment. But that process of internal self-connection can be very vulnerable. It's very sacred. Whereas if I'm just listening and I'm just there and I'm just like fully present listening to them, and then that's it, then that's still wonderful. That will still transform your relationship. But if the other person, sometimes they might not be the best at naming their needs, they might not be very good at it, and so you might not still have that much clarity on what their needs are. You can make guesses in your own mind. You can imagine, oh, it seems like maybe it's this, but you won't actually know until you ask. And that's the interesting thing about the communication side of this process, right? So coming back to this, like sometimes that's why also hearing feelings can be helpful, because together you might help name the person's needs. It could be a group effort of the two of you combined to help name what their need is, because those feelings are the compass that's trying to point us towards it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks, Warren.
That's great. Thank you for these questions. All of your questions have been so great. Like, it really helps bring clarity. Can I get someone who's willing to share with me, just like, I'm purposely gonna get us to use like more of a smaller pet peeve. And by pet peeve, I mean something that annoys you. Someone is willing to give me an example, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna demonstrate asking for consent, and then I'm gonna demonstrate helping do feelings guesses and needs guesses.
Pet peeve for me is I do not like when people borrow my car and it comes back dirty.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I can't see who's speaking. Can you just let me know your name?
It's Jenny.
Hi, Jenny. Okay, so Jenny, like genuinely let me know if are you okay with me kind of going through this process of helping name maybe one or two of the feelings connected to that and then connecting those to the needs you have? Is that
Sure.
something you're open to? Okay. Okay, so someone brings your car back dirty. Would you say like frustration? Is frustration one of the primary emotions that are there for you?
No.
Okay. It's not frustration. And feel free to respond however you want. You can be like, no, but it's this instead, if that's something that comes up for you. Is it disappointment?
Yes. Very much.
Okay. It's a disappointment. Is there a little bit of is there the layer of hurt there?
I think so, because you think you raise your children better than that.
Okay, so it's your children.
I think it's a reflection on me when they don't respect my things.
Okay, so right there, I feel like you're illuminating one of your primary values or needs, which is respect. It's really like it's a lot of it's about respect, and I hear another layer of like, gosh, what would that be? Something about passing on that concept of respect to your own children. There's something about that connection, maybe, or and there's maybe a disappointment seeing that, oh, maybe it's not being passed on as much as I want it to be.
Yeah, it reflects, I feel like people, if I had to go pick up somebody and the car was a mess, then they reflect on me and say, why does your car look like this?
Okay, absolutely. Right. So it's almost like I'm hearing that maybe there's this longing for you and your family to hold that together, hold this like this care for gosh, what would that be? Care for reputation is the word that comes to my mind, but reputation might be like there might be another layer underneath it. I can't. But yeah, how you're being seen, and known by other people.
Yeah, you pick somebody up and then they go and they tell somebody, say, oh my gosh, I went in her car and it was just disgusting. And I'm like, it's not me, but I don't want to, put it out on my children. I'll take the blame for that. But at the same time, I should have told them prior to that, my expectations are A, B, C, and D. And if you don't meet those expectations, you cannot use my vehicle.
Yeah. So on one hand, I'm hearing like you also have this need to be maybe more clear in your expectations and your communication about that. And on another layer, I don't know if this lands for you, but it almost seems like maybe there'd be a sense of safety in that. Would there be a sense of safety knowing that things are clean and kept clean and respected in that way? Does it give a sense of safety? Knowing that other people aren't going to judge that.
True.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so are you okay to pause there, Jenny? Is that okay? I would love to just hear. I would love to just hear, like, what is that like for you to have someone just be with you and trying to help name those feelings and needs? What is that? What is your experience of that like?
It always hasn't been there. I've always had to be my own protector. I'm a protector of my brothers.
Okay, so you classically played the role of protector. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I really, and it's what's so fascinating is like sometimes people don't realize like that the needs can get met for the person who also gets to learn about somebody else, right? Like for me to be able to hear that from you, I found it very insightful and illuminating because we could take 5 people here who all get triggered about their cars being left dirty, and they could all have very different reasons of why that is. You uncover what's underneath it. And I felt like I got to get a sense of who you were very quickly and some sense of connection with you, which that type of human connection is something I really value. So thank you. Thanks, Jenny. And you might notice too that some of those needs, like respect, you could even say maybe for some people might be like health with the cleanliness level of it, or, you know, these are a little bit more like middle tier needs, and then needs like safety are like really fundamental core needs of human beings. And that's usually what's always driving us as human beings. Another quote from Marshall Rosenberg is like, every single action you take in your life is an attempt to meet one of your needs. So everything you're doing, whether you're conscious of it or not, you're trying to meet your core needs of safety, belonging, love, purpose, empowerment, right? And this is what I feel really passionate about, is like, how do we help the world get connected to their needs, build better strategies to help meet their needs, build lifestyles and make choices connected to what they really want. This is where I think real happiness and fulfillment comes from. It's really helped me in a lot of ways. And I'm still on that journey. I'm still learning, but I've definitely helped me so much learning this process. So yeah, I don't know. I got 3 minutes left. Is there any like final questions or maybe even takeaways? Can anyone share with me?
Well, Auntie would like to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
It all sounds really wonderful. But what about people in trauma? What about Indian residential school people?
Yeah.
Generation after generation after generation. Like when I could express that I'm not happy or I'm upset, so I'm triggered, and my niece is just teaching me now to say, what do you need? What do you need, Auntie? And I'm like, where did she learn this language at, right? And even just those words could make me cry, because no one ever asked me, what do you need?
Yeah.
So, when you're talking, it sounds really nice and we're going to learn this, but generation after generation of hurt people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I know, because it kind of just goes over my head a little bit, and it's like, and my body's even starting to shake. I don't know why, but
Yeah.
So thank you for listening to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Like, what I'm really hearing you mention is just like, in the face of the intensity and the weight of how much Indigenous people have been through, all the residential schools and the process of colonization that continues this very day, like, as great as this sounds of empathy, it almost feels like, does it feel like out of reach, or it's like,
well, I've been doing a lot of work on myself, and I'm not the same person, but it feels like it's taken a lifetime to love my own self and to say I have needs and wants, or I'm not invisible. I do have a voice, and thank you for allowing me to share my voice.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
there's so many people that won't even go there. So thank you for all your knowledge and the gift that you bring. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I would love to see a world where this does become more normalized and we can create spaces where our needs do matter, we can be heard. Sometimes I think like as much of structural investment that, say, the Canadian government, for example, put into residential schools, that equal amount of monetary structural investment needs to be put into the healing. Right? That's what real reconciliation would look like to me. And obviously those structures of healing would be great if we had autonomy of how we can design them and use our culture to do that healing process. Yeah, I would love to believe that we were very loving and empathetic, before colonization occurred. So
On that note, Warren, I want to just thank you graciously for your time and your teachings today, your wisdom and your heart. I can see in the chat that there's so many people thanking you for what you've shared, and that honestly has been the entire time. And we are just so grateful to have you join us again, as always. And sometimes, people call me up and say, "Can you recommend somebody to us?" And I often am passing along your name, and I often get people calling me back later saying that was so helpful. Thank you so much. So we're really grateful to have you. And I can see there's just so many in the chat. We will send you the comments as well. And yes, again, truly grateful.
I
Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you for that, Kristen, as well, because yeah, I don't really promote myself in any way. My entire livelihood is based on people saying the words. So I'm kind of this underground facilitator.
Well, that's good to know. If you're comfortable, we'll continue to pass your name along, because
Appreciate it.
Often we know that our educators, there's such a shortage of educators, and it's such an emotional job. It's very common for our folks to be having compassion fatigue and really difficult circumstances working with children who need you to show up with your full being. And then parents are really, it's a hard job being a parent.
It is.
And then running your own work or training or lives, etc., and trying to be present for those little ones. And so there's a lot that goes into that work, and a lot of emotional work, and it can be really draining on the staff. And
absolutely,
yeah, so
how
really
do we keep filling up our cups?
Yeah, exactly. So we really need this kind of teaching so that we can find better tools and better ways to approach and remind ourselves to be compassionate and to come at things with a warm heart, because sometimes you just get so positional. So really, really appreciate you today. And thanks again for joining us. And for the rest of you, it would be a good time to try to fill your cup a little bit. Have a little break and come back at 3:00 when we're gonna be joined by Stuart Gonzalez, who's going to teach us about storytelling. And I know you're welcome to stay. So he's one of the elders that we work with at our preschool, and he's gonna really have some beautiful things to share with you. All right. We'll see you after the break, everyone. Thanks again, Warren.